Hey everyone, David here, and today I'm going to show you how to make Ardoni skins for your, just custom Ardoni skins for your character if you want to make your own Ardoni skins. That's what we're going to do. So, yeah, I'm going to get started in just a moment. This is going to be kind of a long video. It's going to take a while. The Ardoni skins are honestly one of the more complicated ones. In a few weeks, I'll probably be showing you how to make Felina skins as well, once some more Felina characters introduced to Songs of War. But Ardoni, it's going to be a little longer. It's going to take some time. And at the very end of the video, I'll also be showing you how to bring it into Blender, how to set up some nodes like this. That way you can kind of get, if you want to bring it in, you can get all the correct kind of lights and the glowy stuff on them working. So let's not waste any more time and let's just get going. So the first thing you're going to want to do is have a skin editor. For me, I use Nova Skin. Everyone seems to have their favorite skin editor. Doesn't really matter. So whatever works for you. Then when we're ready to start, there are 6 different templates that we use. So let me open up let me get there real quick. Nope, design, Ardoni, here we go. So there's 6 different templates. And I'll put all these downloadable in the description. You're gonna need these, so definitely download these. You really can't make it without these. And there's basically Ardoni, middle-aged female, a middle-aged, not female, which is male, old female, old, not female, and young. So basically, first thing is to determine, what age and gender you want. I'm gonna go right in the middle. I'll choose a middle-aged male, just because it's kind of the standard. So then once you pick the age you want, you bring on your thing, and then we have the template. And that's it, we're done. You've got your Ardoni skin. Oh, just kidding, we need to add the face. Boop, boop, there we go. You're the Ardoni. You've got no markings. I'm just kidding. So the first thing we're going to do is the markings. So once you have your template, delete the empty layer. I'm going to make a new layer. You want to be on a new layer for this. This is going to save you a lot of time. In fact, it's kind of the only way to do it. So make a new layer, and you'll notice if I draw on it, I can draw on that, and then I can still hide that layer, which is the purpose of doing that. Let me just delete that layer and do it again, so we have a fresh one. So now that we've chosen the age, we've chosen our gender, we've got our template in. Now you're gonna, what clan do you want to be? What color do you want to be? I'm not gonna go through them all, but there's all the clan names. I'll just put them up on screen or something. These are the different clans and the different clan names. So choose which color you want to be, and then you'll change your cursor to that color. I'll do blue because I'm the Sandaris. Don't really worry too much about this color just yet. You'll see why later. We're gonna change this. And then next thing you want to do is turn off all the overlays and get to drawing. Get to start making your markings. Start making your markings. There we go. That looks pretty good. Looks like an Ardoni. No, I keep making jokes. I'm making too many jokes that it's hard to follow this tutorial. So with the markings, one thing I'll say is that I've seen a few people attempt making Ardoni skins so far. And one thing I noticed is they kind of just put markings everywhere without really any kind of style. When I do the markings, there's very much a style of doing the markings. For example, there will be certain characters where it's like, okay, they have patterns that are all very long right angles, and then there's like, there's no 2 colors touching. Like I wouldn't have something like, I wouldn't have something like that. You can see how it has like those 2 are touching at corners, whereas all the other ones are empty. And I try to pick like a certain style, or to contrast that, I'll have one where all of them are touching at like corners, and then that becomes the style. Or so you make styles where it's like, okay, maybe I want my character to have a whole bunch of, circular looking things on him. But then you don't want to just like, you don't want perfect patterns, then you might add like little bits of, randomness to it or something. Anyway, so yeah, so that's the general idea. You want to kind of pick like a style, you want to pick like a process, and you'll want to do that everywhere. So I'm going to do a pretty simple process. I like doing mine with the kind of like long lines and all kind of at 90-degree angles. And I kind of leave like little gaps in between. So I'll do something like that. And then every so often you want to like hide the head, go up over on top. And I'm going to probably fast forward through the video a little bit as I slowly just go make all the different little markings. It is important to note that you can, definitely make sure you kind of go around the character, go over the tops of him, and you'll also want to like hide the inside and do little bits on the inside as well. What's also important to note is the good thing about doing it on this extra layer is it's really easy to erase. If you're using something like Nova Skin, you can literally just right-click it and you don't mess up the underlying stuff, which is why we do the outer layer. Saves a whole lot of time. Also, you can put some texture going up onto the head. For most Ardoni, I don't have texture going on the head. However, every so often, if I want it to be a little more unique, sometimes I'll take a little bit of it and kind of go up onto the head just a little bit. Sometimes I go up a little bit at the back, go maybe a little bit underneath. But usually I keep the markings off the head, but I'll put a little bit on there just to show you. So that's probably about good for now. It's not amazing. It's definitely not the best Ardoni markings I've ever done. Normally I'd spend a little more time detailing it. Honestly, I might actually the back looks a little messy back here. Seems a little like there's a big empty space. So I'm going to go a little bit more. Also, definitely make sure you didn't accidentally put any you didn't put any texture on the overlayer, so we don't want anything on that overlayer. And you also notice one thing I did is I kind of made it so the texture is a little more heavy on one side of the skin. If we go to the front, you'll see that it kind of creates like a little bit of an angle, goes down a little more on one side. I often do that on my skins for the Ardoni to kind of make them stand out a little bit more. If you have, Ardoni skins are already hard enough to kind of tell who's who as it is. But if you do something like this, it's like, okay, mine's the one who has this kind of like an angle. He's really heavy on the right side, or maybe he's not so heavy on the right side. Anyway, this looks pretty good. So we spin around it. We see that I followed the same format. Everything always touches at perfect 90-degree angles. There's nothing like that. Everything, I did a very kind of vertical one on this one where a lot of the lines were like they'd go very far down. I had these kind of like intersecting things that were also at 90-degree angles in between. But again, you don't have to do this. You could have chosen a different style from the beginning. You could have done a style where everything was like, with little dots at the end. I've done Ardoni patterns that were like, that had a bunch of little markings that looked like that. So you can kind of choose your format, choose your style, but then make sure whatever style you do pick, try to keep it consistent throughout the whole thing. So there we go, we got Ardoni markings. But we're not quite done. Now we need to actually turn back on the hat layer, and we need to do our little colors on the ears. I'm actually going to double check this real quick. I want to make sure I get this right. So, okay, that's what I thought. So it does go over. So we're going to need to add the little ear bits. And let me hide that now. So to do the ear bits, we're still on our little marking layer. We're on the outer layer of the head, so we can see we can put it on and it kind of floats on the outside. And we're going to want to cover up, let me zoom in a little more. We're going to want to cover up the 3 dots here. And then going down the side, we're going to want to cover everything but those the bottom dark pixels. So like so. And on the other side, same thing. Like so. That way we get one little dot in the front on the corners, one dot on the top, and then on the sides you get this kind of like thing going down. Let me one more time just confirm. Let me also pick a middle-aged someone like Zulius. Yeah. So yeah, you get the 2 by thing and then you just kind of go down. Oh, it does go down to the bottom. Oh no, okay, I got that. Let me just show you quickly what's different with the female. If I bring in the female, the main difference is when doing the markings, when it comes time to do the little top bits, rather than just doing the corners and going down, you're also going to go over one on the front. And I think it goes over, yeah, and I think it goes over one on the top. So you get a little bit more of it. It almost kind of looks a little more like little ears or something. So that's the main difference of the female. They just have a little bit more light around the top corners. Let me confirm that by just bringing in a female skin. Yeah, oh, okay, it looks like it's slightly different, okay. One thing does change on the side, and that's the top one is not the 2 pixels, right, because if you do that, then you get this weird kind of like really long, thick blob. The females, they were a little thinner. So now we've got our markings, we've got our Ardoni skin, but it doesn't look very good yet. You notice when I put the Zulius on, the Zulius had nice shading, had nice colors, and he had the face and everything. Don't worry about drawing the face on just yet. We're going to do that all later. So, now that we're almost good to go, we're going to export out our markings. So if we hide the middle-aged thing, Oh no. Okay. I lied about erasing. Apparently if you erase on the outer layer, it creates the underlayer in the outer layer. That's weird. That's probably just a problem with Nova Skin. Although we can easily fix that in a moment anyway. So, no worries. We're still flying half an Ardoni. So let's go just the outside layer. We're going to hit save. We're going to right click the actual skin file. We're going to save it. I'm going to just make something on my desktop called Ardoni skin for tutorial. But you'll probably want to name it like after your thing. And we're going to call this file tutorial skin underscore, I call it markings, because these are basically the they're little glowy markings and everything. But we'll update this a little bit more in a moment. Okay, so you've got your markings, and we're just getting started. We still got we got a ways to go. So the next thing I want to do is open an image editor. I use GIMP. GIMP is free. You can download GIMP. It's not an amazing program, but it's free. It's like Photoshop. If you have Photoshop, you can use Photoshop. However, if you use Photoshop, I would recommend only using Photoshop if you're pretty familiar with image editing, and because you're going to have to kind of follow the steps I use, but using Photoshop's tools. So hopefully you'll know how Photoshop works enough in order to follow along. So what we're going to do then is we're going to go back into the template we brought in before. We're going to want to bring that in again. We're going to start from that again. So let's go to the Ardoni. We use the middle-aged male, so we're going to start bringing that in. So now we're back to that bit, and then we're also going to bring in our... Where's our Ardoni skin? We're going to bring in our markings we made. So we're back to where we were. We've got our two different layers, the outer layer and the marking layers. But because we exported the markings out and had that weird problem, we're just going to really quickly get rid of all that. There's a few ways to do that. I'm just going to use the select by color, select all the blue color, Control I to invert the selection, and hit delete. Now I've deleted everything but the color. So again, if you did what I did and you accidentally erased some things and you have some colors you want, you use the select to color, select the color that we want, and because it's all one color, we only use that one blue, it should all be selected in one single click. Then we're going to do Control I, or just basically, select, invert selection. So now we inverted the selection to everything but that color, and we hit delete and we got rid of it. So there we go. Now we've got our markings and we've got our skin. So it's time to get this thing going. The first thing I would start doing is I would take the underlayer, and we're gonna do a colors, curves, and we're gonna want to start like giving our under thing a little more, a better shading, a better tone. So by default they're a little dark. And this really is up to preference, how kind of bright do you want them, how dark do you want them, how much contrast do you want. Some Ardoni I have pretty dark, they get pretty, a lot more like this, they get that really dark look. Some Ardoni have them a little more pale, some are a little more contrasty, some are less. A few little notes is I usually have the younger Ardoni tend to be a little more pale, they tend to be a little brighter. Someone like Sen might be more like this, but so if you're young, you'd be a little paler, and if you're female, you'd probably be even slightly paler. So for this one I chose a middle age. I'm going to go kind of something in the middle. I'm not going to do something too weird. I might bring up, I don't like those little dark bits. I'm going to make those dark bits a little brighter. I do want to kind of bring down the top so it's a little darker. You can toggle on and off the preview to see how you're doing. Honestly, something like that, that's fine with me. Just a little bit of, it's kind of brought out a little bit of it's a little more of a mid-gray. And we'll hit OK. So now we have our kind of basic color. And then the next thing you're going to do is, not that, is it going to open up our folder? There's one more file that I'll supply in the download that you're probably wondering what that file was, and that was the what's it called? It's called the Ardoni Skin Shading Overlay or something. This was something that I invented a little bit later. We started making the skins early on, and they just looked like that. But as we got better, we noticed like the kind of flat shading is a little weird. It looks kind of cheap. So I made this image, which didn't bring in nicely. Zoom out all the way, bring in the overlay, and it should nicely line up. And you'll see it adds like this kind of shaded detail. If we toggle it on and off, you'll see that it kind of gets that nice shading. And the amount you'll want is going to be dependent on, you know, how shaded you want, how old you are, how kind of, if you're more of a protagonist or an antagonist. So for me, because I'm just kind of a blue guy, but I'm a little older, I want a little bit of shading. It almost kind of creates like a little bit of a bearded look. You get that kind of like, almost like stubble. If you're female, you'll probably want this very, very low. If you're young, you'll want it kind of low. But if you're, the older you are, you're probably the more you want, or the more, if you want your character to look a little more rough or something. I'm gonna go kind of around like around 60, maybe 65 or so. And that's good. And then, oops. And then once we're happy with having that kind of amount of shading, we're gonna go to layer, merge down, and that will then merge it. So now we've got we just got it kind of baked into the skin. Okay, so we're getting there. Not quite done. A few more things to do. So then we're gonna take our skin, and the next thing you want to do is maybe start doing some colorization. There's a few ways to do that. You can go into curves if you're comfortable with curves, and you can kind of like, you know, play with the colors. You can also do colorize. That's another one people might like. Where's the colorize? Colorize. Where is colorize? I don't see it. There it is. You can do a colorize. However, colorize is pretty intense. But you can play around with like kind of where you want. So I usually do the colorizing the color of, you know, what clan I am. So if I'm blue, if you put it right kind of the middle gray, that just kind of leaves it alone. You can make it a little bit more like in the blue you want, or sorry, in the color of the color you chose. So because I'm blue, I might put a little bit of blue. You can also sometimes do not that color. You can sometimes colorize it in another color if you want. You can get other colors, but I think it helps having the color of your clan as the color you kind of choose. This also kind of plays around with contrast, so be careful with this one. I might do curves in this case. Colorize is alright, but for me, I get a little more control if I do curves, because I can do something like that, maybe. Bring the red down in the upper areas just a little bit. There we go. So again, if I toggle it on and off, you can see I just very slightly kind of made it a little more blue shaded because he's blue. Hit OK. Now we've got our kind of shading. And one last thing I like to do is I go to colors, filters, noise. In Photoshop, it might be called something different. In noise, I use the CIE itchy noise. And now he's all itchy. We're going to dull it a whole bunch. And then we're going to turn down the chroma pretty much to 0. And then we'll start using the lightness. And this just adds a little tiny bit of random. See how it adds some random. It adds some randomness. You don't want much. You don't want to start looking like you've got a disease. But if I add just a little bit, very, very slightly, it helps just kind of break up, maybe a little more than that. Just a little bit. It helps just kind of break up some of the perfect pixels everywhere. So there you go. That looks kind of nice. And still, we're still not done. The blue is still very flat. So this is where the fun begins. How many Star Wars quotes am I going to make this video? So you can start going through the blending modes. Now that we're kind of, excuse me, now that we're at the end, we can go through the blending modes. We can use something like addition. This is how you'll see a lot of them appear, like addition. I think I can hold, if I hold shift and scroll while hovering over this, we can just start going through them. And we'll start seeing different ones really blend in different ways. So it's really choosing which one you like, which one works for you. Yeah, that one's kind of interesting. And what's important to notice is that you can blend through all these, but you can also then go back, if while we have this layer selected, you can go to color, you can go to something like hue saturation, and we can decide, oh, maybe I want to make him a little more light blue. Maybe, oh sorry, grabbed the wrong one. Maybe I'll make him more of a dark blue, maybe I'll make him purple, maybe I'll make him more of like a kind of Thalius kind of thing. We can bring up the lightness so he's brighter. This is why I was saying at the beginning when we're first making the markings, I said it didn't really matter what color you chose, because we're going to come in here and now we have full control over our markings. If we want to completely change clan and go to another color, we can do that. I'm going to go something kind of like, I think this kind of blue, maybe a little lighter, maybe a little more saturated, something like this. I'm liking this a lot. And you see how now it's got that nice shading. The lines are no longer perfectly flat. So now we've got our nice looking Ardoni, and we're almost done. So you don't want to just save it off like this. What I would do is the first thing you want to do is, if we're all happy with this, well, first you might want to just save this as like a project in case you want to come back to it later and work on your skin. But I'll do it just because. So I'm going to go on the desktop and I'm going to save this as like my Ardoni skin. So now I just got the project in case I want to resume here later. But we need things like the eyes. Okay, see, the reason I'm getting a little stuck here is I'm wondering if I should I'll show you the skin one first, then we'll get to the stuff for Blender. So let's just do that. Let's just finish making the skin, because some of you won't need the Blender stuff, so we'll come back to the bit if you need to use it for your animation. Sorry, I just keep saying Blender, assuming everyone uses Blender, but it could be whatever you use. So, I totally forgot what I was doing. Oh yeah, I was gonna make the eyes. So the eyes, I think they're 3 pixels up from the bottom, and I'm on the wrong layer. So go to this layer, go to make sure you're on your skin layer. I would even grab like a color from one of these like dark pixels or something, and I'll use that as the back of my eye color, like that. And then for your eye colors, just pick a nice color that you like from your actual glowy bits. Make sure that you're on, oops, oh, in order to do that I gotta make sure I select it from that layer, there we go. Make sure you're on that layer, and make sure there's no like, make sure your pixel size is set to 1. Sorry, I went kind of fast there. It's been a while since I've done tutorials. You want your size to be 1. You want to make sure there's no like, you know, feathery weirdness. I use the pencil tool because it's perfectly like, it perfectly snaps to pixels, just like, you know, in before. So there we go. That's literally the skin. I'm going to save this off. I'm going to export this out as an image. I'm going to call this my Ardoni skin. Export. Export. Make sure you export it as a PNG so you have all your transparency. Then if we're back in here and close all this down, I'm going to refresh the page. I don't know why the bottom is so high up. It's normally not like that. Get rid of all that layer. And if we go to my Ardoni skin, you should see that we've got our Ardoni skin. That's literally how you make the Ardoni. You see it's got the eyes. And sometimes I come in here and realize, honestly, I think that blue is slightly off. So you can always make like a little tweak afterwards. Yeah, a little more blue. You can bring it in there. Everything looks good. Sometimes I add little bits of detail afterwards. For example, that actually turned out way too kind of perfect. So I'm going to, in Nova Skin, I'm going to turn back on the noisy thing. I'm going to kind of just like vary up some of these pixels. You see how they're a little different now? Whoops. There we go. Gave it a little bit more variety. These are pretty subtle details, but if this is like your own character, you want to spend a little bit of time really like perfecting it. And the reason I'm clicking over and over is because it's just randomly choosing different colors, so that's good. Now there's a little bit more shading on those. You can see that they look a little better. And if you see little spots on the skin you want to even tweak up, you can do that. And now that I made some changes, let's just make sure we save this off as the correct one. And there you have it. The beginning, at the end of the first bit of the tutorial was making the making your skin. You've got the skin. And as far as rewinding earlier to talk about, I didn't really talk too much about the ears. So the difference between the low, middle, and old is literally just the length of how long this is going to be. If it's like this, you'll see it goes down to there. If the middle age, if we had chosen the old one, let me get rid of that real quick. If we chose the old one, same thing. However, you'll notice it will go, rather than stopping here, it can go all the way down to there. So then they're a little longer as they get older. Their little things get longer. And if we were young, it would have stopped off, you know, even sooner, like up there. So that's what the age determines, is how long those things go down. A quick little note about those for people curious. I've been seeing a lot of interesting Ardoni artwork. People have had their own interpretation on what they look like. However, I thought I'd at least show what our reference was for these things. What we actually used was World of Warcraft Draenei. These are what we actually used as reference for their kind of things. A photo like that. This is kind of what the Ardoni design was based off. The kind of thing where they would have like these flowing, you can see how it even kind of like starts at the top corner and then it kind of curves back down. There's kind of these longer flowing things. Sometimes I call them ears, sometimes I call them horns. I do like the idea how these have the curved things and they still have normal ears down below, so it's actually more of like just some part of the skin. There's a bunch of different photos that kind of show, but I'm cool with different things. I've seen some where they're more like where people have drawn on more like horns, which is cool. But I do like the idea that they kind of sweep back. Here's a good example. I like that kind of like they flow back and kind of curve down nicely. Adds a nice little touch. So that was what we got little kind of horn ideas off of. We based it off. Here you can see buff Thalius. There's Thalius, super buff. Anyway, so you got your skin. You're almost done. But now let's say you want to bring it into Blender. So from this point on in the tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how, sorry, again I said Blender, but it could be any animation software. From this point onwards in the tutorial, I'm going to be just showing you how to kind of modify your skin and make it work in animation. If you just want to do skin for Minecraft, you're welcome to stop here, and thank you for watching. Otherwise, let's continue, and let's show you what's next. So I'm going to delete that little skin markings I made before. It has all the weird pixels anyway. We're going to kind of start fresh from our final skin. So you've got your final Ardoni skin. What now? First thing to do is go back into your image editor. Let's just close this thing down. We're going to start a kind of blank scene. Bring in your skin. The first thing you want to do is cover up your eyes. Don't look. No, not your actual eyes. Your Minecraft character skin's eyes. So cover them up. I just grabbed like the neighboring pixels above it and covered them up. Now his eyes are gone. And we're going to save this, or sorry, export this off as my Ardoni skin _ Blender. Or whatever you want to call it, because I call it Blender because it's for Blender. And then there's one more thing we want to do. We want to separate out the markings again. Luckily, if you made the markings using Nova Skin, and you didn't mess up like I did, you could literally use that image, the same image you used when you exported out of Nova Skin, if you just had the markings, and you can use that skin as the markings file. However, if you messed it up, or you changed it, or you lost it, you can reacquire the markings by, once you delete the eyes, if we use our color selection thing again, we select the color we want, but we notice it didn't grab all the color, so we're going to shift select all the kind of the marking bits until we notice it's kind of every single one seems to be selected. Right now it looks like they're all selected. If we hit Control X, we should see, yep, all the little marking bits disappeared. Make sure you got all your ears, make sure you got everything, make sure you don't have the eyes, you don't want the eyes. One thing you might notice when using this tool, sometimes you'll select things, you'll hit Control X, and you'll see these like half opaque pixels. It means that your selection kind of took some of it, but not all of it, because you didn't actually select it. So in order to do that, just keep going around, making sure you select everything, or at least make sure all of the colors are fully selected. If you Control X, you want to look around for a moment, really make sure you got all the pixels. There's no half transparent pixels. So then we'll paste, and we'll paste it into a new layer. So now we've got our marking layer back, but it'll now be the final markings, even to have the shading. Doesn't matter if we're having shading, no, we're just using this for transparency later on. So now we've got our marking layer. We're going to isolate the marking layer, and now we're going to export it back off as my Ardoni skin. Markings, sorry if I went a little fast through this. And again, if you had your original, you know, the non-shaded flat markings you had done right at the beginning when we did the stuff in Nova Skin, you can just use that file, as long as there's not the other stuff, and as long as you didn't change the markings later. But I think it's a good habit to spend the extra time to just make sure and go back and do this. So now we've got our final skin, our Blender skin that doesn't have the eyes and face, and the layer that just has all the markings, but doesn't have the glowing eyes. So, into Blender. And I'm going to use the BPS rig. You can use whatever rig you want. You can use anything you want. I'm going to use the BPS rig. And bring them in. Bada boom. And we're going to split the screen because we're going to want to use the node ender on the left. And on the right side, we're going to go to skin. We're going to get rid of the Steve, and we're going to open up our skin. I'm going to use the normal skin now. We'll come back to that in a bit. So here's our skin, but you'll notice if I turn on like rendered mode and I turn it down, you know, he's not actually glowing or anything. He's still very dark. So the first thing you'll do is for the eyes, you can literally just eyedrop the eyes from there, and don't forget to set it to emissive. And I usually turn it up just a little bit, like 1.1, 1.2, maybe just 1.1. And then for the eye whites, you can just kind of grab the little dark bit that you drew on your skin. And for the eyebrows, I like to choose one of the colors like from up here, depending on how kind of dark your skin is. You could go something kind of pale, that's too pale, so I'm gonna grab like the darker one, maybe like that. And I always have their eyes a little bigger. The male eyes are usually like, oh, okay, well now that we've loaded that, we can actually turn our skin. Now let's go back to the skin and load up the actual Blender version of it. That way there's no more eyes, so now we have full control of the eyes. For the males, I tend to have them a little bit bigger than average, but not too big, something more like that. For females, they're pretty large. Not super large though, but the females are definitely noticeably larger. So let's go back to being a male. Also, if you did choose female, I also choose the, for the eye whites, I make them a little brighter, or a little lighter. Same with the eyebrows. This looks pretty good for a male. So we're mostly there. We just need to get the markings working because he's still not glowing. So let's leave it in this skin mode for a moment. And let's look at the skin here. So we have him as a diffuse. And we have his transparency and everything. So that's kind of how, let's make that a little bigger so you can see a little better. Okay, so we want to mix the diffuse with an emission. So we're going to add an emission node. And we're going to add a mix node. So we're going to mix between the emissive and the diffuse. Let's plug it all up kind of like so. So now if I use this thing, I'm mixing it between being glowy and being not glowy. But it's making everything glowy. We just want the markings to be glowy. And this is where that marking file comes in. If we take our skin file thing, duplicate it up here, and then we change this one to open up the markings, we can use the transparency of this to control the mix. So now you see we've got the markings separated, so we can have the markings separate. And that's it. That's literally it. Now we're done. We've got our full Ardoni. We got a glowy boy. We got all the stuff set up, and everything's good to go. So that's it. Hopefully, if you were enjoying Songs of War and you like the Ardoni and you wanted to make your Ardoni skin, hopefully this helped you. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. I realize I went a little fast at times, but feel free to kind of rewind and watch it over. You can join the Discord if you get stuck on a bit and, message us and let us know. I'm looking forward, if you do make these skins, I'm looking forward to actually kind of seeing what you make. Honestly, and here's another thing. If you make a pretty cool Ardoni skin, we could easily probably work you in the background of future stuff. Because we always need just like tons of just random background Ardoni, and we only have so many. So if you make a pretty cool one, we could put you in the back, potentially, if we have room. Let me also show you just a few things about the design process. I'll do a full like skin design featurette I'll get like Lux and Nerf and other people around where we'll talk about designing process, but I thought you might just enjoy seeing this as example of when we did when we first started making the Ardoni, we did stuff like this. We didn't even choose a color. We just did it in white. We just made patterns. We made a bunch of patterns until we were happy. Then we looked through, found like, oh, I like that pattern. Oh, I like that pattern or something. Once we found patterns we were happy with, then we took the white things, colored it a color, chose what clan we wanted, put the markings on, put the layer things on and everything. So you can always just, make a bunch of these little patterns and then bring them all in. And you can even kind of reuse things. Like we can take our thing, we can go back to here. Let's merge that back down for a second. You can always take things and then just be like, oh, I'm deciding to be Nestoris now or something. Hey, look, I'm Nestoris. You can kind of get a lot of reuse out of them if you so want to change things around. Although you'll probably want to do a little more fancy than this. That's that. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry this is long. The Ardoni ones are honestly one of the more slow, complicated ones. The Felina one will be way easier. It's probably gonna be like a 2-minute video. But the Ardoni a little more complex, take a little more time. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. If this helped you, leave a like, leave a comment, share your Ardoni skins on our Discord. Let me know if you make one. I'd be happy to see them. And I will see you next video. Goodbye.